My name is Jerm. This is Jerm Warfare, the battle of ideas.
Well, the bad points are that you are pro health, pro truth. These can't be allowed today. So
it's funny you say
do great
that.
Work.
Gabriel, yeah, thanks for that. But it's funny you say that because 20, 30 years ago, yeah, if you were a rebel 20, 30 years ago, you would have been against all of these things that you just mentioned. Now, if you pro those things, you are the rebel.
Yeah, obviously there's all sorts of weird things happening today, transvaluation of values, and all the good things are bad, all the bad things are good, and obviously the powerful people, that's why I talk about the technocracy. That's kind of my brand, escape the technocracy. However you want to define, the technocracy, basically it's the use of technology to control people, and that's a big emphasis of anybody who gets into power is to control, is to stifle free speech, is to stifle a lot of these ideas. And with the podcast revolution, with the internet revolution, people are definitely being exposed to more and more ideas. I can tell all the time, the people I talk to in real life, I'm like, oh, you must be on X because you're saying some wild stuff, which is probably closer to the truth. But yeah, there's a lot of people who are waking up and they're very hesitant and they're very skeptical and they're very, they have their finger on the pulse of something for sure. There's something going on here.
I sometimes wonder though whether that whole quote unquote waking up story can also be a bad thing. It can work to our disadvantage.
I think there's something to that, and in a number of respects, because a lot of people make it their identity just to go online and talk about these things. They're not actually being a rebel. They like to hear rebellious things. They like to hear how victimized they are by the system. And the more they can make this abstract, the Jew world order or what have you, the more they can feel like just eternal victims. And they just enjoy that. In fact, I've had people tell me recently, like, you want to build your brand, stop talking about solutions, build up the fear porn a little bit. And because that's what people want to hear. They don't want to hear like, oh, there's a solution to you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Like we talk about it all the time. You can download all the YouTube videos you want onto your own computer. You can get your own hard drives. You can have encryption. We have a replacement to the monetary system these days. I know people who have run businesses off of cryptocurrency for 15 years, but they don't want to hear that. They really do, I think, want to just sit in these, just keep scrolling on X and see people say, oh yeah, look at how bad the surveillance has become, but then not actually do anything about it. So yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely some problems as well.
It's funny you say that because I have been talking about this for quite a while now, that people in the alternative or independent space have become addicted to what's the word I'm looking for, the phrase? They are consumers of what?
Outrage.
Yes, consumers of outrage, consumers of alternative media, as it were. They don't really walk the talk.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. One of the most important things you can do, of course, is to produce and not consume. That's why I was looking at somebody, they have a note on their computer screen that says, are you producing or consuming? I think that's a big part of it, that you don't just want to be scrolling. You don't just want to be reading. It's important to consume some stuff, but you want to actually be producing. And for people who are truly rebellious, what does that mean these days? It means having a family, having kids, growing your own food, building your own business, helping people out, knowing your local community, right? That's a solution. I talk about privacy a lot. And we can talk about all the tools for privacy, but really the reason why there is a lack of privacy is because people don't trust each other. And when they don't know each other, when they don't trust each other in a community, what do? They outsource a lot of this policing and surveillance to a bigger, more abstract apparatus, the police, the county, the state, the government, and then before you know it, you have a very trustless society. But these can be solved by all the old-fashioned things about knowing your community and all that kind of stuff. That's where people's efforts should be focused on. I know they're listening to the show right now, but hopefully they're doing something productive while they're doing it. Digging out some trenches for their vegetables or working out or something like this. So.
I can guarantee you that a lot of them are not. And I'll tell you why. Because the independent alternative space has become saturated with a lack of trust. Everybody is controlled opposition and a gatekeeper.
Yeah, I mean, that's the super negative view, but there's certainly a lot of that. I do talk to people, I see people, and they ask the most bizarre questions about trusting the most bedrock
I'm saying that
things.
sarcastically, by the way.
Okay. There are people like that for sure. No, I try not to get caught up in that. At a certain point, you just have to agree on certain assumptions and move on from there. And I've been down some of those rabbit holes and crazy skepticism. But at the end of the day, the skepticism is an endless pit.
Yes,
Like
exactly.
some of the people who will go and start questioning some topic. I'm like, yeah, well, how do you know that? Well, you know, I read this, or I'm like, well, how do you know that the words you read actually interact with your brain and the way you think? Now, look, I've got a background in philosophy, so we can do the skepticism to the point where you know nothing. Trust me. So at some point, we take things on faith. We agree on certain things, and you just have to let the skepticism go and funnel that energy into productivity.
UK's co-founder Brian Gerrish said on my show a few weeks ago that he finds that a good default position is to take people at face value.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fine. It's a lot easier, by the way, if you're talking to people in person, which I try to do a lot of these days. There's no online argument worth having. I see you're back on Twitter. You're replying to people. I'm just like, I wouldn't even do that, to be honest. Like, there's zero value I find in
I agree with
replying
you.
to people online.
I only do that because I'm just trying to get a little bit of traction.
Okay, yeah, it's good for the algorithm. It definitely makes people, like, that is a good strategy if you're trying to build an audience on Twitter and get people interested in you, is to respond to people. I do that sometimes. I try not to be a sarcastic dickhead, but that's usually the version of me that comes out. But what can I say? You know, that's inside of me as well. I grew up on the internet. I've definitely said some very mean things in chat rooms and video games.
We all have.
Yeah, and that part of me is still there. But yeah, in general, I really try to have any serious conversation with somebody I know in person if I can.
I think Jordan Peterson was right when he said that the internet has amplified sociopathic behavior. Yeah, no,
the internet is definitely responsible for a lot of problems we have, and we can take, you know, this is where I moved a little bit away from the techno optimism, and I try to bring a little bit of techno pessimism back to things. Not too much. Like, I try to be a little bit in the middle. But, you know, there's a reason why Ted Kaczynski's manifesto is a bestseller on Amazon in many categories, because people look at that, they look at the title, they read the book, and they're like, yeah, you know, technology is not all that great. It's certainly producing a lot of husks of human beings who are just sitting at home. They're not interacting with people. Like, how many people are there out there right now who they go to work, they go home, they don't interact with anybody else throughout the day? They're following their whatever Twitch streamer that they're following. That's just how they spend the next 3 hours of their life. And then they're ordering Uber Eats to their house. They don't even go out. And then, you know, they do the pornography thing and all the rest. There's serious consequences to technology as well. And the internet has absolutely amplified a lot of the worst qualities of humanity, 100%.
I just realized that there's no video feed for you, and it's not because you are technologically challenged. It's just that you are the privacy guy.
If you give me 5 seconds, I can fix that. It's just I have to reach over and fix something.
No. I'm pointing that out for those watching the video.
Oh, yes. So I'm the privacy guy. I started out talking heavily about privacy. The brand now has escaped the technocracy. I've kind of migrated to a larger brand. But yeah, privacy is a big focus of mine. I've gone down the privacy rabbit hole, extreme privacy. We're talking, I don't even know what my home address is. Okay, that's how much I'm off the grid. There's nothing that reveals my location at any given time. Alternative operating systems on phone and computer. I get into all the sorts of privacy strategies. I advise on them. I talk about them all the time. And for me, that was it was an interesting thing, especially in the age of surveillance. How far can you get off the grid? And there's legitimate reasons why people would want to do that. I have clients that are escaping from violent ex-lovers and things of this sort. There are legitimate reasons, and I think everybody obviously should be concerned to a degree about their privacy, because surveillance is very obviously control. But I've also pivoted the brand a little bit just to talk more about digital freedom, right? How do we actually own the stuff on the internet, for example, and not be just continuous renters? So there's a lot of things when you get into thinking, thinking about digital tools in a little bit of a healthier, different way. You regain your privacy. Yes, you also gain your ownership, so that we're not pursuing this world of you'll own nothing and be happy. You start to own more things. You have to have more sovereignty over your software. I'm running, for example, a Linux operating system to talk to you right now. Most of the programs on my desktop are free and open source software. I know all the code that has gone into those. It's, I can view that. I can see that. There's no update ever being forced on me. That's another part of the ethos of free and open source software. So I'm owning this software as much as I can. It's not spying on me. I don't need accounts. I don't need permission to do the things in my life. Sure, when I pull up a browser and I start using those sorts of cloud services, maybe some of that changes. But I've developed the mindsets. I have the tools so that when somebody asks for a phone number, this or that, I'm not revealing anything that really attaches to me. And so it's an interesting lifestyle. And one that I hope we get into some of these things, but it's also led me down the path to discover a different side of the internet, right? I wouldn't have found germ warfare if I didn't have a little bit of a tech savviness and maybe a little bit of a skeptical mindset, and found myself on some back alleys of the internet, perhaps. So it has a number of uses.
So you and I do speak offline, and you have sent me one or two photos, and I can confirm you are in a very remote but beautiful location, that's for sure. So you are walking the talk in that sense.
Yeah, I try to walk the talk. I'm a little bit less extreme these days, because I realize, hey, if you want to do some networking, if you want to really make some connections with people, if you want to increase your wealth, which can also lead to better freedom and privacy, you should probably open up a little bit to the world. I still don't have my camera on right now. I'm not going to trust our software to look at my face. And it's also just a habit of mine. And I always make a joke about, oh yeah, I can't get my camera working, even though I'm the tech guy. But I try to walk the talk. I think that's important. I think that's something that a lot of privacy influencers don't do. I'm like, wait, why are you using your real name? Why are you showing your real face? Why are you not going down the deep layers of privacy? Not just fiddling with your iPhone settings. Oh, turn off the front-facing camera, but actually getting physical privacy, which is really crucial, difficult, really important. Having utilities privacy, jurisdictional privacy, legal privacy. All these sorts of things are things that I discuss with clients on a regular basis, in addition to the tech stuff. So yeah, I do try to walk the talk. I think that's very important, obviously.
You've just made me feel like such a loser now, because I still use Apple.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything, but I'm glad you brought up how bad you are. No, I mean, look, when it comes to Apple products, Apple's approach to sovereignty and privacy is trust us, bro. That's kind of their approach. And sure, you can trust Apple. Their stuff works decently well. Here's the other thing. So there's some privacy concerns with Apple devices, right? When I have an iPhone, I cannot use that without an account, for example. It's a lot of closed software. We just assume that they're sending a lot of this data back to the mothership, which they are, right? You're using a MacBook. They know what your IP address is, all these sorts of things. But the other thing about Apple that I'm starting to hate even more than the privacy stuff is they're anti-tech. They're anti-computers. So I'm a big PC guy. And what Apple has done is they've gone off in a different direction. They're making their own computer chips. They don't let you repair their computers. You can't upgrade their computers. You can't take all the components in the PC world and just use them on Mac products. They've gone off in their own direction. They're a very closed ecosystem, which is, in my view, is a huge mistake. So I'm a PC master race toxic person. And so that's another reason why I don't like Mac. But yeah, it is what it is.
But hopefully you hate Microsoft even more.
Oh, don't get me wrong. There's no Microsoft stuff on my computer either, right?
And Google.
There's no Google. I'm basically completely de-Googled. I do have a YouTube channel, but that's just because where a lot of people end up. So I just upload there and I'm on my way. But no, I'm de-Googled. No Microsoft. There's very little big tech influence in my life. Absolutely.
You use Graphene OS, I think, on your phone.
I try not to use a phone. I don't think people really need to use a phone as much as they think they do. For all of your computing needs, your banking, all the rest, you don't need a phone. In most cases, I mean, some people, their bank really requires them to use an app. But in most cases, you really don't need a phone for anything except phone calls when you're away from home. When you're at home, I can use Signal on my PC. I do it all the time. I make most of my phone calls to people I know within my network on my own computer at home. I don't need a phone when I'm at home. So it's just when you're away from home that I maybe need a phone, but I'll travel without it regularly. Or at least with it turned off, maybe in a Faraday bag. So yeah, I don't even think you need a phone as much as you do. If you do get into kind of phone privacy, sure, Graphene OS, which is a way of taking a Google Pixel phone, wiping out all the Googled elements of it, and basically hijacking the device with a new operating system called Graphene OS, which de-Googles everything, still has a very functional experience on there. That's definitely an avenue that people can go down. It's kind of the equivalent for Linux on PCs. You're basically taking a big tech product, you're wiping it out, you're hijacking the hardware, and installing your own operating system of your choosing. So I like that. Again, it's not just about privacy, it's about sovereignty, it's about hacking the systems in front of us. It's about taking matters into our own hands. That's what I like about this kind of lifestyle.
To be fair, though, at the risk of sounding like a hypocrite, there are multiple battles that we are fighting. So if I'm a bit weak, shall we say, because as I said, I use Apple, I still try and be strong, as it were, in other aspects of my life.
Well, we all have our preferences. I find that most people don't go down the privacy, digital sovereignty rabbit hole because they think it's super complicated. I've never found it super complicated personally. But yeah, I mean, you're part of the revolution.
Hang on. No. Wait. I used Linux. I say Linux, by the way, not Linux. I don't know what the correct way of saying it is.
I've never heard anybody call it Linux, just to be clear.
Okay, but what's his name? What's the guy's name on which it was based?
So his name is Torvald Linus, but it's called Linux.
So I'm going to go with the one that sounds closer to his name.
If you want to go against the entire history of pronunciation, you do you.
I'm a rebel.
Of course, yes. No, look, I know you've used Linux. It wasn't able to do what you wanted it to do.
Yeah, I tried it for 2 years.
Well, I mean, what was the single biggest problem?
Tinkering. Everything requires tinkering, and when you do the amount of work that I do, I don't want to spend 2-3 hours a day trying to get stuff to work. And I tried different versions of Linux. I installed Ubuntu because that's rooted with a fellow South African, Mark Shuttleworth. Then I tried OpenSUSE, and then I tried Fedora. That's no go. Arch, no ways. No. And
all of those either are a little bit more advanced, or they have a default desktop environment that is difficult to learn.
I went with Mint ultimately.
That's what I'm using right now is Linux Mint. It will remind people of the old days of Windows. And, in terms of productivity, I don't know what to say. I've got Audacity here. I can record my stuff. I have KDN Live here. I can edit my videos. And then I use a browser for most of my stuff like most people. So I've never had a problem. But I would encourage people, try something like Linux Mint. Get an old computer, an old PC, or you can buy a Lenovo ThinkPad for less than $200 on eBay or secondhand. Just install Linux Mint on it and give it a go. And you'll find, obviously, that you're now using an operating system that is not spying on you. You don't need an account. And it is it's a better ethos, right? The free and open source software movement where people are collaborating, they're doing it in full transparency. It's almost a cult, right? In a way, that's how much people love this kind of stuff. But they love it for a reason, because that's a better way of doing things, and it's a way of undermining big tech.
I think one of the what's the word I'm looking for? The draw cards of Apple, though, is it has a very strong creative suite. I record music as a hobby, and electric guitars and MIDI keyboards and that kind of stuff. And Logic Pro is the software, and it's industry standard. Now, it's very difficult to find that kind of stuff on Linux.
Yeah, look, if you're the 0.001% of the population that's doing those activities, I agree. Maybe Apple's the way to go for you, for sure. Everybody else, give Linux a try.
But having said that, I do have a Linux machine. I've got a separate laptop that is Linux.
Well, that's the other thing, is that people think that, I need to have like this one computer. No, I've got a dozen computers lying around here. And a lot of them are very cheap. It's not like they're expensive. It's secondhand computers. I have one, and now I upgrade. Now I have another computer. Well, what can I do with that old computer? I can, with my knowledge of how to install a new operating system, I can install a Bitcoin node. I can install a server that is doing all sorts of things for me in the background. That is, torrenting things, legal things, obviously. That is, running my AI assistant. That is, running my media library of videos that I actually own. So, having multiple computers, installing multiple operating systems, getting comfortable with that, it's not as difficult as you think. It can absolutely open up a world of freedom, of self-hosting. That's another key aspect to this, where you're not using Google Drive anymore. You're hosting your own files on your own hardware that you have, your own hard drives that you purchase within your house and even outside of your house. These are the things that people need to realize. They don't need to be locked down. Even if you need a Apple computer for your recording of various things, you can have a world outside of Apple, the freedom world, where you can actually be a free human being.
There's an interesting macro segue here when we're talking about privacy and surveillance. Now, I live in South Africa, and it's notoriously an African country. Right, so we have a remarkably broken infrastructure, and that includes surveillance. Cameras, of which there are very few, usually have bullet holes in them. People shoot them broken, that kind of thing. And we don't have a very strong government. Now, I see that as a good thing, and that's one of the reasons why I enjoy living here. We spoke about this, I think, on your podcast. And as a result, you don't prioritize things like surveillance and privacy as much as you would say in China. Now, where I'm going with this is because, again, as I said, we spoke about this on your podcast. Are you free if you are in an incredibly dangerous society?
Yeah, this gets us into some very deep questions.
I can't hear you if you are. You've muted yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, this gets us into some really, really deep questions. I don't look at all cultures equally. I think some cultures value privacy, some don't. So when I talk about privacy and such, I'm talking about the Western tradition. And I would include South Africa, for the most part, in that tradition. And I think that the system in China works for the Chinese. I think that, we see Latin America taking a right-wing authoritarian turn. I think that's honestly probably best for them. We have places like El Salvador and such. Basically what happened in El Salvador was a guy came in and he said, look, all of these literally satanic gang people that made it the murder capital of the Western Hemisphere, he just scooped them all up, put them into a giant prison. Now it's safe to walk at night in El Salvador. I've been to El Salvador in the last few months. It's a safe place. You can actually go and do stuff. That is freedom, where you can leave your house, you can do stuff. Your teenage daughter can go out and not fear being attacked or harassed or these sorts of things. That's great. So it's a nuanced conversation, but in the West, I think Western people are well suited for decentralization. I think they're well suited, therefore, for privacy. But there are some key ingredients I think that are necessary in order to have those things. I think you have to have a homogenous society. The more multicultural, the less trust there is. I mean, that's an observed fact. And of course, Western countries are increasingly less homogenous, so I don't think they have the ability to have these sorts of privacy, freedom-oriented societies anymore. It's just not going to happen. So that's something that you really need to fix from the start before we even have these sorts of conversations. But to the broader point, I do think that you have to consider many things in this conversation of how far do you want to go with freedom. You have to consider many, many things, including the demographics, as I've just said, including maybe underlying values. Maybe you could say you need people with appreciation for the Ten Commandments and these sorts of things. Would this work in an atheist society? Those are the sorts of questions I'm more interested in, because I don't increasingly think less that it's a matter of economics or politics or some of these other things. And there's some really deep things that need to be solved. I used to be kind of an anarchist, but there's Leo Tolstoy was also an anarchist. He has a really good line. Leo Tolstoy has a really good line, and this is how I end one of my books. He says, we talk about revolution, right? What is needed is the most important revolution, the regeneration of the inner man and his morality. And I think that's something I'm more focused on, and less kind of pointing out like, there's this aspect of surveillance in this country and all the rest. When I see that, my first instinct isn't, tear it down. My first instinct now is, okay, why is that there? Like, why does China have all this surveillance? What do the Chinese people think about that? Maybe they're okay with that. Maybe they value being able to walk around safe at night. Maybe they actually, if we're being honest, as you've talked about, maybe they actually have more freedom of speech, for example, than people living in San Francisco. So I do appreciate the flexibility of thinking through these issues right now and just saying, all surveillance bad, all the rest. I'm the privacy guy. It hurts me to say that, but there's deeper things at work here.
Yeah, I mean, what you're ultimately pointing to is there's a false dichotomy because I guess another way of asking my question is, you have a mass surveillance state like China, and then you have my country, which, depending on which source you read, is generally considered about the 7th most dangerous country in the world, including war zones, right? So, in other words, my wife can't walk alone at night to the shop, right? So yeah, we don't have the surveillance that China has. So who's better off? You know what I mean?
No, of course. And I would, if you give me a choice of South Africa or China, I'd probably say, well, I'll take China at this point. But, I can see the trajectory that South Africa is going, and that's kind of part of it. I know people who have chosen to live in China, and they like it. They realize that there are restrictions, but my person I know who chose to move to China is a little bit obnoxious about it. Basically says, oh yeah, there's more free speech here than the U.S. and Canada.
I don't think that's true, though.
Okay, dude. And he says that, as long as you're not criticizing the government, you can talk about how there's only two genders without getting fired. You can, whatever you want to do, deny the Holocaust, these sorts of things. There's just kind of one thing you're not supposed to do. So anyway, that's how he sees it. I don't necessarily want to go and thoroughly test these sorts of things.
But so, what you're essentially saying is that the idea of privacy is actually relative.
Oh man, we're really getting me to question my entire values and all the rest. I think that privacy, freedom, decentralization naturally flow from a well put together, homogenous Western society. That's how I would put it. And I'm more concerned about fixing those underlying things at this point than putting a bandage on a wound instead of treating the source is how I think. Now, I'm willing to do both. Like, we can put that bandage on and have these conversations. And obviously, I talk about all sorts of privacy strategies, but I don't think for a minute that that's actually solving any underlying problem. When somebody takes down a flock camera in the U.S., I don't think that's solving an underlying problem. If you look at the CEO, I think like one of the people high up in the flock ecosystem, these are cameras that have cropped up all around the U.S. that are recording people's license plates. I think he's a guy of Indian origin, and I mean, does that guy value privacy and freedom like Americans who have grown up in generations of these ideas? No, I don't think so. So there's other things at work here, and it's not just a matter of cutting down the flock camera. It's not just a matter of using your Linux operating system, because there are other problems at work. And the flock camera is a good example, because sure, I can sit in sit on my throne here and have access to all the cryptocurrencies and all the freedom tech I want, but I have to go outside at some point, and those cameras are outside. And when I'm in the public domain on the public roads, suddenly I don't have the ability to control my environment. Suddenly I am at the whims of my culture now and the decisions that they have made about privacy. And they've made them recently again and again that they don't value privacy. They're okay having cameras around everywhere. They're okay with surveillance cameras that destroy my ability to be anonymous and to be private. So yeah, maybe, I don't know if I'm answering the question, but maybe that's some stuff for people to think about.
You kind of are answering the question rather diplomatically, I might add. But is there any consolation in the fact that a lot of humans aren't involved with surveillance? That it's just algorithms and computers, and ultimately, if you're driving on the road and you get picked up by a camera, they don't actually know anything about you. You're just a data point.
It's also a good point, because we worry so much about surveillance and all the rest. And there's a side of this, which is that, freedom means you not caring about certain things. Like, are you realistically going to be punished in the West for certain activities that you're doing? Probably not. Like, is this surveillance actually going to, cause you to get into trouble? In most cases, probably not. I mean, sure, there's cases where it will. But when you're recording so much, and this is what the NSA realized during their high era of surveillance that Snowden exposed, obviously they still do this stuff, is that they just had so much stuff that they were observing, they couldn't really do anything with it. It didn't stop 9/11, for example. So at a certain point, there's just so much going on that, like, this is a common thing you'll see people who don't care about the privacy question say is, oh, they don't care what I'm doing. And I think that's true. I think that's actually by and large true. And I do think you can overthink these things a little bit. And one of the biggest middle fingers to the system is to say, I'm just going to do what I'm going to do. And, come stop me, basically. I remember talking to a friend, and I was talking about, you could do this in terms of reducing your tax liability. Oh, you could do this and this and this and this. And at the end, he just looked at me and he said, you pay taxes? So there's kind of that aspect to it as well. And I do appreciate the people who don't care, who legitimately don't care. They're like, okay, surveillance, I'm not going to let that live rent free in my mind. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And sure, if I get some kind of extra ticket down the road, a lot of these people don't even pay those, right? So there is a rebelliousness in not caring about these things at all whatsoever.
Well, I mean, let me give you an example. You just mentioned a ticket. So here in South Africa, you can actually get away with not paying speeding fines. And the reason for that is because here in the province that I'm in, which is the Western Cape, there was a court ruling that basically made a judgment that the entire speed fine digital infrastructure was corrupt and therefore cannot be trusted and therefore null and void. And they haven't fixed it for 10 years now, which means that you can actually just simply not pay any speeding fines, and nothing will happen to you.
And in Latin America, places like Mexico, on paper, they have high taxes, for example, restrictions, but in practice, nobody really pays those things. So there is a level of rebelliousness that is a lot deeper than the people screaming about this surveillance camera, the amount of surveillance cameras in London. The people in London who are going about their lives, probably not realistically affected by these cameras. They just go about doing their stuff and not caring about it. It's not living rent free in their mind. There's definitely a freedom in that. And, I am a fan to an extent of dysfunctional places, because you can, obviously get away with a whole lot more. And people do realize that, okay, sure, there's the law, but, that doesn't necessarily mean.
So someone had this conversation with me about a week ago. Oh, but it's the law, right? Okay, so what? Here in South Africa, 40 years ago, it was the law that if you were black, you weren't allowed to be on the same train as a white person, right? But that was the law. The law is fickle. It changes based on who's in power.
Yeah. No, I get it now. I'm not moving necessarily to South No, anytime soon. Maybe I'll
but you are going to visit.
But I will visit. I will absolutely visit. But that's because I like a good train wreck. No, I'm sure. I'm sure things are. But look, South Africa is its own situation. You have serious racial tensions that I think are absolutely going to collapse that country. But that's not necessarily the case everywhere, certainly to the extreme extent elsewhere. So I think South Africa is definitely a different situation. But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, it's kind of an outlier in some ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a crystal ball. I can see what's going to happen in South Africa in the next 10 or 20 years, which is why I don't want to be there. It's
the other way around. Western countries are going to look like South Africa in 20 years. Watch what I'm telling you.
Maybe I should go to South Africa then and study, learn some.
Hedge your bets.
Learn what to expect. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Look, I mean, we are making light of these things, but the point is, Gabriel, that the idea of privacy is very important. This is why Catherine Austin Fitz pushes cash, and a lot of people talk about carrying cash all the time. I've had a lot of debates recently about why I'm not a big fan of carrying cash, and it's to do with safety. But think about this for a second. Cash is still fiat, and that's government legislated currency that is manufactured by the banking system. So by using cash, you're still perpetuating the system.
Well, of course, if you really want to give the middle finger to the fiat system, you just take out as many credit cards as you can and never pay them off, because that's not actually debt that you owe. And you take out a bunch of loans and all the rest and just never pay them back, right? I'm not suggesting people do that. But yeah, I mean, look, you've touched on a number of things there. Obviously, we're more people than ever are aware of the crazy fiat system, these dollars that are not backed by anything, these currency notes that are not backed by anything. The famous case being the $100 trillion Zimbabwe note. That kind of tells you where all this stuff goes eventually, right? More trillionaires per capita than any country, Zimbabwe, back before they just completely got rid of their currency. So there's the fiat problem. Yes, I agree. There's the fiat problem and inflation, which is money printing. I hope a lot of people understand that at this point. And there are alternatives to that. We could talk about cryptocurrencies.
Well, this is where I was going. This is where I was going with that. I was speaking again about privacy. I mean, I know that you've spoken about Monero, for example. What are your views on cryptocurrency?
I try to be careful about how it's kind of like, proselytizing to somebody at this point. You're like, you're waiting for the open. You're not going to be like, oh, have you accepted Jesus as your Lord and Savior? You're not going to start with that, right? It's going to be more like you wait.
Baby steps.
Well, and honestly, I'm legitimately not trying to proselytize. All I'll say is that there are solutions for the fiat system, the banking system. I'm kicked off. I've been kicked off some of these banking systems. There was somebody tweeting in the Bitcoin community recently about how Wise discriminates against anybody who has an attachment, even tangentially to Bitcoin. They'll just shut down your account. Of course, they never give a reason. All the sorts of garbage that the banking system is responsible for. Of course, the government is also side by side with them in shutting down people's accounts, and you can't take out your money. You don't own your money. All these sorts of things. Cryptocurrencies cropped up as a way around that. Bitcoin is the OG. Bitcoin has a transparent ledger. It's got some privacy problems. I think the community has not leaned into actually using it and spending it. They have this idea that it's going to go up in value. It's just this, it has value by virtue of the fact that there's only 21 million of them. I don't get too much into all that stuff. On a practical level, I do know people who have lived and run businesses on cryptocurrencies for the last 15 to 20 years. They've never had a bank account. They've never touched the fiat system. You can get around like that. We discuss these things. We in our newsletter, Watchman's Torch, on Substack, we talk about going around to these Bitcoin communities and using just Bitcoin across the world. So these things do exist. You can live on cryptocurrency. Monero is one I talk about as well. It's kind of more privacy focused. I'm not talking about speculating or investing in these things, but as a tool for financial freedom to get around the banking system and all these good things. It does work. It's not simple. Like a lot of the Bitcoin influencers like to say, it's not simple. It's not easy just to accept cryptocurrencies in your shop. Monero, you can't even buy in most exchanges these days. It's been delisted. You're immediately on the peer-to-peer marketplace. So I don't want to talk about this as some kind of panacea. But for those who have the appetite to get into it, it absolutely works for people. And absolutely, when you make a transaction and it's just click, and you've sent whatever, $1,000 to somebody across the world in like 3 seconds, and not a single person on earth can stop that, that's pretty powerful. That's a pretty cool feeling.
Yeah, I mean, the blind spot that I think many of the cash pundits have, and I'm not anti-cash. I mean, I have cash on me right now, for example. I don't carry that much cash on me because it is quite dangerous here.
How much cash do you carry around with you?
Shall I tell
Jeremy,
you?
walking around South Africa.
But one of the blind spots is the cash comes from your bank account. Now, during COVID, bank accounts were being shut down if people were saying the wrong things, Gabriel, on social media. What happens if you have no bank account? You don't get cash.
Well, no, I see what you're saying. In those situations, there are people who run cash-only businesses, and they accept cash for their business.
Yeah, but you need a bank account. In order to get the cash out of an ATM, for example, you have to first have a bank account.
Well, sure. I mean, I could go pawn my stuff off in my house on Craigslist for cash. I could start, cutting somebody's grass for cash. So, people have run cash-only businesses. That's definitely a thing. You could even run an e-commerce business with cash and have them mail cash. In most countries, that will work, right? Maybe not South Africa, but most countries that will work. So, yeah, I mean, you can get cash outside of the banking system. I do get your point that you're still using the dirty fiat. But I'm still a big fan of cash, where it's safe to carry it around. I'm happy to carry around lots of cash. I pay exclusively in cash whenever I can, and that's a great privacy strategy. But yeah, it's look, we could get into gold backs. Those are interesting. Basically, it looks like a bill, but it has particles of gold that have been put onto this bill, so you're getting more back to a gold standard. I guess theoretically you could pay with pieces of silver. You could pay with whatever you want. I'm fine with cash. I think that the fiat system, especially the U.S. dollar, is going to last a lot longer than people think. I'm not going to be betting against it, certainly in the short term. You can go around the world and still use $100 bills to get you places. I think that's the most powerful tool for privacy. Not China, of course, exactly. Yeah, no, China's its own beast. But I think the U.S. dollar is the most powerful privacy tool in the world to this day. So I'm okay being a little bit agnostic about these things. Even this is kind of the one of the themes of this discussion so far. I'm okay using that tool, even if I understand deep down that it's attached to a very big problem.
Well, this is the point. So there's a degree of complexity and nuance going on here. And I think that the binary 1-0 way of thinking is not terribly constructive.
You've got to be adaptive and flexible in these things. This is one thing that I'll see, for example, the Bitcoin maximalists, and they say, oh, no, I'm not touching these other cryptocurrencies. And no, I'm not going to use cash because, the fiat system's broken. Okay, I would prefer to be opportunistic. All right. Maybe there's a use case for Bitcoin. Increasingly, I would say less so, especially if you're privacy oriented. Maybe you're interested in Monero, but maybe you're using the dollar, which I do for almost everything I can. Use cash, and I've traveled extensively in Latin America and Europe. You can use cash still, no problem. I know we have this cashless society narrative. That is the case in China, as you know, Jeremy. But in most places, you can still use cash plenty. So we don't want to be tied down to one particular thing. Use all the tools at your disposal. Okay, maybe sometimes you need to use an Apple computer because you're making music. That gives you enjoyment. Maybe you can run a business off of that. So you have to have your Apple computer for those sorts of software. That's fine. I'm not going to sit here and say you have to do all these things by the book. There's an adaptability that is also important, especially if you're being a person pursuing privacy in a world that is constantly shifting.
Yeah, I'm going to get an angry reply from someone going, you can use cash in China. Yes, you can. But I was there for almost a month and I didn't see a single cash note or coin. So it's possible, but it's not the default anymore.
Well, that's another thing is people who say, oh, you can do this, you can't. For example, I was posting something on Twitter recently about how we need to be realistic about how difficult it is to accept cryptocurrencies on a website. You're always giving up something. Okay, you're either giving up privacy or sovereignty, or you're giving up your certainly automation. So you're always giving up something. And somebody replied who was running this like Monero plugin for something like, oh yeah, you should just use this plugin. I was like, no, that does not solve. Like you're still giving up something in that process. So the people who are very rigid and they say, oh, you can do this, you can't do that. They don't live in the real world, and in the real world, you want to be able to, if you do these super rigid things like some of these people you're talking about describe, you're not going to have money, you're not going to be able to get around, you're not going to be able to do a lot of the things that ultimately we really want to be doing. I don't want to be sitting Ted Kaczynski style in some bunker somewhere and waiting out my life and not participating in the stock market that's reaching, by the way, all-time highs. If you were somebody who was preaching about how the economy is going to collapse, the global economy in the last 20 years, 30 years, you're a liar, and you have misinformed people to a staggering degree, and you've lost out on immense amounts of wealth. So you're a problem, and you have to sit there and realize that you were wrong in your assessment, and you have lost out on life, you've lost out on profit, and maybe you shouldn't be quite as rigid about the things that you believe in, because there's the underlying values, and then which we don't really want to sacrifice on, but there's a number of tools at our disposal, and you want to make use of some of these tools. Sometimes I might want to use Dropbox, for example, but I can use a program such as Cryptomator, where I can encrypt everything within Dropbox. So I can use all of the amazing infrastructure that Dropbox has created, where I can access large amounts of data around the world, but Dropbox is not able to see what's inside that encrypted container. I'm hijacking this big tech system. So that's kind of what I'm saying.
And this is quite important because it's very easy to get lost in ideology. Have a family and then suddenly see how your worldview changes.
There are simple pleasures. There are simple things that, yeah, I agree people should fall back on. Get off the internet, certainly. After this episode of this show, stop listening to podcasts for a while. Go touch some grass, build some stuff, do some woodworking. And yeah, don't get... This is one of the problems with the internet is that people have all these ideas that they really probably shouldn't have, honestly, to the extent that they have them. When people go down these rabbit holes on the internet and they just lose their sanity, I'm like, okay, you're red pilled. What's at the end of the red pill? Insanity? Is that worth it? So yeah, I agree. People should moderate. The simple things in life are still the best. Have a family. do things with them, work with your hands, all these good things, which I'm not just going to articulate here because that's boring. But yeah, all the good stuff.
Yeah, you said that you don't want to articulate them, and that's a sad place to be, though, Gabriel, because you are right. Everybody wants to stop and look at the car accident on the side of the road. It's more exciting to doom scroll. But when you actually talk about the things that actually improve your life, like privacy and growing food. My wife grows a ton of food here at our house, and we certainly try and walk the talk across the board. But it is also a balancing act. It's about choosing your battles.
Yeah, but are those heirloom seeds? And aren't you worried about the chemtrails? And I mean,
there aren't any yet.
No chemtrails.
I mean, Cape Town.
Where could we go? Let's
I mean, Cape Town. So well, hold on. So just as you got to understand the geography. So I'm at the bottom tip of the African continent. There's no reason for airplanes commercially to fly at altitude. So they're either coming in for a landing or taking off.
Yeah, but that South Africa, every aspect of it is owned by the powers that be and the diamond and gold mining industries, and you have basically no freedom at all in any second of your life as long as you are within the borders of South Africa. Let me make a hour-long video and put it on BitChute so that you can understand just how unfree you are. That would be sexy. People would watch that.
Dude, BitChute is rubbish. I can't understand how it became so popular. I mean, the actual platform itself is horrible to use.
Well, if you spell it out, by the way, it's BITCH. That's the first letters. So I think maybe it was a joke. I got off of BitChute. It just wasn't working for me as a content creator. So I just kind of planted my flag there with one video and kissed it goodbye. But yeah, BitChute, there's some rabbit holes people have gone down in BitChute for sure. So I'll at least give it that. Yes,
and Rumble is also rubbish. It's just a mission to work with. I hate Rumble. I don't upload any videos there.
I mean, here's the important thing about the video platforms also, and a lot of social media. It's a network effect. That's the main value of these things. YouTube is valuable because it has a huge network effect. Sure, are they doing amazing things to compress their videos, make them accessible all around the world? There's some magic that happens there. But at the end of the day, it's the network effect that is the reason. And so I'll get people on Twitter and they say, oh, why aren't you on Nostr, this decentralized messaging protocol? Like, there's 7,000 people in the world on there. Like, what am I going to do on there? Talk to a few Bitcoin maximalists?
I've got it installed. Do you say Nostr?
Yeah, I think that's how the agreed upon pronunciation. But I know you have a problem with agreed upon pronunciations.
So I've got it installed. In fact, I don't think it's called Nostr. I think it's called Primal or something.
Right. So Nostr is the protocol. Primal is one of the apps that makes it easy to access that protocol. But yeah, it's rubbish. Look,
it's junk.
Well, here's the thing. Like, you go into the tech of that. I recently had a guy on my show. I have a lot of Bitcoin connections, those sorts of people, and he'll go into the tech. I'm like, this is, it's fabulous. It's a fabulously architected structure. I don't want to use it, and nobody else wants to use it because Twitter is just a lot more easy, and that's where everybody is. Most importantly, that's where everybody is. So this is one of those things where we have to be opportunistic about things. And if you're really trying to solve problems for people, I know somebody who's working on this crazy private messaging app, which, no identifiers, all the good stuff, but I don't think anybody's going to use it because it's not going to be convenient. It's not going to have the network effect. It's never going to take off. And so, we do have to live in the real world at the end of the day. And while I appreciate the tech, I do think that there are other things people should consider, especially the techie people. You always have to have in mind more than just the tech, because there's more things that go on when somebody selects one software, one website versus another.
I think ultimately what you're saying is that we all need to just move.
No values. I'm for sale.
Yeah, let's just move to the big platforms.
Follow me on YouTube. Absolutely.
But I mean, you are right. Nobody uses some of these super esoteric social media. The ideas are good, but ultimately you also want to get traction. You could be the ultimate privacy guy and be on an island in the middle of nowhere and have no internet connectivity at all. But nobody will ever know about you, and you'll never get your message out.
If you want to help people with privacy and sovereignty, become fabulously wealthy by participating in probably traditional finance and all the regular stuff, and then build an amazing platform where you choose the values and you're the philosopher king, and we can follow your lead and all that good stuff. Decentralization, I don't think, can lead to a revolution. I don't think it's capable of overturning. Anyway, we'll get into some other stuff there, but I think that's what you want to do. If you really want to change the world, become fabulously wealthy, become powerful in all the traditional ways of doing so, and then do better in your turn.
Well, I see what you did there. You very sneakily invoked Plato. So go live in a cave if you want to be completely private.
Go in the cave, enjoy the images in front of you, realize that perception is reality. Why do we have to know the underlying reality? I mean, that's a lot less fun. Remember the guy in the Matrix? He's like, I don't care if this is fake. This steak is fake. I just want to enjoy it. So, I mean,
Sure. Yes, you're right. Wow, I forgot about that. I must actually watch that again.
Well, The Matrix is a great film. Obviously, that's clearly a reference to Plato's cave, where, of course, in Plato's cave, people are looking at all these shadows on the wall, and they assume that's the reality. And only once they leave the cave do they see the real world, and they're just overwhelmed by the actual reality. And this ties into Plato's ideas of the forms and such, where there's this substrate of reality. But at the end, the most unhappy people I know are people who have gone into philosophy.
Yes.
So there's also something to think about. Was it from Ecclesiastes, where much wisdom is much grief, and he who increaseth knowledge increaseth sorrow. So there is something to that, and I think that people who are just absorbed in their minds and thinking through, also high IQ people, very unhappy people, I find in many cases, and they have all these mental issues, and they get depressed and all the rest. Important to go back to a little bit of your base human nature in a lot of cases.
So the unhappiest people are the philosophers, and the most boring are the accountants.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, no, I mean, but I think high IQ people who are red pilled, they like to judge people, and I don't think they're wrong to, but at the same time, the person who's going to doing the 9 to 5 and just working a basic job has no idea about vaccine hesitancy and all the rest. I think that person, you could argue, is getting more fulfillment out of life moment to moment than you are with your sitting perched from above, judging people, and just having incredible self-doubt and maybe some depression and feeling isolated from everybody because they don't understand your ideas and all the rest. So, I'm at a point where I'm not giving suggestions here, just kind of reflecting on human nature.
Well, I mean, look, you mentioned IQ. I just want to quickly segue there for a second, because I had this discussion about a week ago with a few people, actually. And I am of the opinion that an IQ test is really just a test to see how high you score in an IQ test.
Well, let's go down the rabbit hole and red pill IQ test and how incorrect they are, and it doesn't actually measure intelligence, and it was created by eugenicists, and we shouldn't talk about IQ whatsoever. Now, we're kind of getting back into
it was a Frenchman, wasn't it? It was a French guy who developed it back in the day, I think.
Well, but then when I say IQ, we know that some people are more intelligent than others, and that is a heritable thing as well. So just whatever we mean by intelligence, I guess. The more intelligent you are, I find that people like that tend to be prone to depression, unhappiness, and all the rest. And that's mostly because they are, and they also undercut themselves quite a lot. So yeah, it's. Yeah. Anyway, what should we talk about with IQ?
No, just quickly. I want to come in for the final lap, but I just want to ask your opinion on AI and privacy.
Okay, yeah. So we talk a lot about AI. In fact, I'm looking on my website here, escapethetechnocracy.com. We have an AI resistance course. And AI is obviously a very useful tool. I use it a lot for art. And whether or not I know you have an entire show on this, is AI art, but when I'm looking at the AI art on my website, I think it looks really good. I think most people are like, wow, that's awesome. It took me 20 seconds to make. I'm not capable of doing this myself. So it does increase your productivity massively. It can help you start a business where previously you didn't have a business. Obviously, I'm using this all the time to answer questions. It's a lot better than the forum posts where you search something on your search engine and you go to a forum and then the first answer is, oh, you should ask that on a search engine. Like that's the first answer. Very unhelpful. So AI is very helpful at troubleshooting all kinds of technical problems. It can write for you. We actually use a combination a lot of times for some of our articles. We have AI kind of spruce up a certain idea or a certain style to it. So you can use it as a companion in a very powerful way. Big proponent of AI simply because it's not going anywhere. We can't turn off the switch. So it's with us. And so if you're not keeping up with it, you're falling behind at this point. Now, the privacy implications, obviously, this is the big tech extraordinaire product because now we're typing all sorts of personal things into AI. And with ChatGPT, for example, there's, it's a black box. You type in something, they're just scooping up all that stuff. You add your PDF of your medical test, they're scooping up all that stuff. What do they do with it? Well, essentially whatever they want. So obviously there's privacy implications to that. I've seen a lot of people, by the way, Jeremy, completely disregard privacy. This is the last stop of privacy for them. Because they're like, yeah, I have my AI assistant, I have my OpenClaw bot, which has entire control over every aspect of my computer. I don't recommend that, by the way. But they've said, this is what I want. I want productivity. I want Jarvis from Iron Man. They need to have access to all my thoughts, all my images, everything, because I want to be, I want to have a giant business. I want to be super productive. I want it to be monitoring every aspect of my health and my life. So this is their last stop on the train of privacy. I've seen a lot of people do that, by the way. I'm not at that point, just so people know. So privacy and AI, if you want to get started, I would recommend a service. Well, you can self-host AI. That's something you can do. You can download something like GPT-4all, and you can run whatever local model that your computer can run. If you have a crappy computer, then it's not going to go too far, but you should absolutely give it a try. This is downloading AI onto your computer. So I can turn off my internet and it's still working. It's the entire large language model on your computer. Something like GPT-4all, also Ollama, you can kind of get started with that. Other than that, I like a service, I have it pulled up here, called Venice.ai. Depending which model you're using, they're running it on their own models. So it's not querying some big tech service. So that's another fairly private way of using AI. And then I also like a service called NanoGPT. NanoGPT, I know the guy who does NanoGPT. You're basically accessing all the big tech models so you can test them all out through an intermediary. And you can pay this intermediary, NanoGPT. You top it up. You don't have like a monthly account. You can top it up. You can pay with privacy crypto. You can test all the models. You can use all the amazing text models, coding models. I could create you a website, Jeremy, in 3 minutes, actually 30 seconds. It'll look awesome. Great way to have website sovereignty is to have a code in HTML website. You can make awesome images. You can also create songs. I now reply to people sometimes with an AI song. And it's perfect. It's actually quite incredible. So you can do all these things through an intermediary. It's not private in the sense you're still sending this information to ChatGPT, to Google Gemini, or what have you. But at least it's not in your name, and you've paid for that in a private way. And NanoGPT does all kinds of interesting things, like it marks all of the data that they send along to these companies as medically sensitive. So there's some interesting things happening. If you want to test out the full suite of things, try NanoGPT. Just don't do private kind of personal stuff on NanoGPT, at least to start. So you can play around, and I would encourage people to play around with all these models. You can do it in a fairly private way. You can do it in a fairly anonymous way. But ultimately, if you really want to take advantage of these tools, you don't have enough RAM on your computer to use the best ones. They've eaten up the entire RAM market. RAM is like 3 times more expensive than it was a year ago. So again, following kind of a theme of this discussion, when you want the best stuff, we're going to be trudging back to big tech for the ultimate version of these things, and we want to use it sometimes, not always, sometimes for certain things in certain cases.
When I was on your podcast, I think we spoke about Cargy. That's what I use for searching the internet. I don't use Google or Brave or what's the Yandex. I use Cargy.com, and it's a private search engine. And for what it's worth, they say that all your searches are held within a private. So in other words, they don't track and trace. I don't know if that's true. I'm sure somebody will say, well, they're just saying that, but have a look. Cargy.com is what I use, and the attached AI LLM that comes with that account that you set up is their own, and so that's what I use. I don't use GPT or Claude or whatever, but they do have those models as part of the suite. You can select.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've been meaning to go more into Kagi. That's Kagi.
Yes.
And this is a great example of how sometimes when you get into the privacy ecosystem, kind of the alternative ecosystem, you can get better results. The reason why Kagi search is so good and, in your view, better than Google is because it's
a meta search.
Blocking.
It's a meta search.
Right. And it's finding not what the big tech juggernauts want you to see, but it's actually doing its job of finding what, it thinks you would like to see. So it can completely remove all the top search results. It can completely remove the big conglomerate news website results, and in doing so, it can get you to some indie websites where you can potentially get closer to the truth. So it's a good example of an alternative tech platform that can do better than the big tech, and that's why we want to use both.
They actually have an option, let me open it quickly, called Small Web. And so you can do a search. I don't know if you're on Cargy at the moment, but you can do a search and then you can select Small Web. You turn that on. And what it'll do is they use their own terminology, but they say basically they'll find the other side of the internet. In other words, so they flip the entire thing around so that you'll find the smallest websites or the most independent websites that you otherwise won't find. You will eventually find them on Google, but you've got to go like 50, 60 pages in, and nobody does that. And that's what they will try and do. They'll try and bring those to the front if you turn that option on, which is very, very interesting. You get fascinating results.
Right. Yeah. The small web, the simple web. This was basically, a return to the old, a lot of times HTML style websites where they're not promoting anything. It's not like a million ads in your face. Oh, sign up for our newsletter, these sorts of things.
With animated GIFs.
For that. Exactly. Yeah. You look at these websites and you're like, oh, wow, what's going on here? But, it's a different side of the internet. It's not as curated, politically correct, trying to get your attention. Like some of these news websites I go to today, I'm just like trying to, it's a bombardment of stuff. It's sexual content, even if it's like a big tech platform. It's doing everything with the assistance of their literal psychologists who are advising them on these websites to distract you and, prevent you from actually doing what your brain is best at.
I had a look to see at what their user base is, and it's very small. I think it's like between 100 and 200,000 people in the world. And but because you are paying to use it, I don't think they care too much about size. They care about quality, which is very evident if you use Cargy. And I wanted to actually interview them to chat about their whole ethos. And they said, no, they don't do interviews.
Oh, interesting. Okay, well, that kind of rules out I thought they were on an interview with somebody I know, so maybe we can. Or
maybe they saw my website.
I think they saw your Holocaust denying, vaccine hesitant, Satanist website, and they're like, yeah, we're not going on germ warfare.
Just by the way, you mentioned you use AI to generate art. I also do for my podcast because it's much quicker. And you can train it to be consistent to some degree. I mean, it's still fairly hit and miss, but it does an amazing job if you combine it with Photoshop. I say Photoshop. I don't use Photoshop. I don't use any Adobe products. But I just say Photoshop because it's the easiest way to. It's like saying Google. So I edit the images and I play with them a little bit. And you're right. You can get a lot done in like 5 minutes.
100%. We actually have a course, and we do make video games using AI. My colleague, my companion in our Escape the Technocracy brand, every bit as technologically savvy and much more so than I am. I'll wake up one day and it's like, oh yeah, here's the video game that I've made using AI, the coding, the art. And this is a thing where people will say AI is taking jobs. And there's obviously truth to that. At the same time, you're able to make your own video game, which, if you're Ubisoft, that requires a team of 10,000 people to make a video game. You can make one yourself. So it's also creating new jobs, new opportunities for people. If you have your head in the ground, you don't want to touch AI, you think it's demonic or what have you, I would really reconsider some of that stuff, because you're absolutely going to be left behind.
It's a tool.
And it's a tool, right? It's a tool. And there's a lot of really cool things that you can do with AI. You can do it in a private way. You can do it in a sovereign way. And you can actually use it to enhance your privacy. That's one thing we talk about in our AI resistance courses. I can feed my locally hosted AI my text, and I say, strip out the fingerprint. So I have no text fingerprint anymore. It can't, reveal me by my writing patterns. And it can do stuff like that. It can generate aliases for you. It can generate realistic looking, houses that you could put on your website to say like, hey, I live in this area, except it's an AI generated image. It can do all sorts of radical privacy related things as well. So don't sleep on the tool.
I was going to say now that I also have a local AI app on my computer called Whisper. So you download it, and then you can download models, language models for it. And the reason why I do that is because it helps me create transcripts for my podcast. And it's, as you were talking about earlier, it's on my machine.
100%. Whisper is one of these tools where you realize I can, on my own computer, just strip the transcript of any videos, and now I could use another AI to turn that into an article or do research for me. Or here's one thing you can do with a fully agentic AI such as OpenClaw. This is what I did for a live event we were doing teaching people. I said, okay, look, go on the internet, find all of the videos for this particular person when they talk about Israel, for example, and create a montage. And that agentic AI has the ability to search the internet, to download the software that could download these videos on YouTube, to transcribe them using Whisper, to find these sections where this person's talking about Israel, then to combine them and create a video using video editing software on that computer. It created a 20-minute montage for me of these particular videos overnight while I was sleeping. So there's a lot of powerful things that you can do, which is why I say don't sleep on AI. If John Connor was alive today preparing for Skynet, he would be learning how to use his own locally hosted AI, because that's the only way that he would be able to defeat Skynet.
I've got, I will have, in 2 months' time, I'll have 2 boys. And I know that their future is going to have AI in it. And it would be absolutely moronic of me to try and pretend that I don't want anything to do with AI.
My main thing about digital privacy and sovereignty is we want to understand the tools. We don't want to live in the tech realm, but we want to have a certain tech savviness. And we want to be able to take the big tech systems out there, whether that's a Lenovo computer, whether that is Dropbox, some of these things, take some of the big tech options and hijack them with our own knowledge. That's the cypherpunk aspect. That's the cypherpunk mentality, is understand the tech. Don't be afraid of it. Don't fear it, but learn how it works so that you can hijack it. Maybe you can find some alternatives and you can use it to better your life, because we are living in a technological age until, things change, and we would be literally undercutting our very existence if we didn't make ourselves aware of some of these tools.
Okay, how can I follow you or your work?
Check out the free podcast. Search for Escape the Technocracy on your podcast feed. YouTube channel as well, Escape the Technocracy. I think you'll find what we're about once you start listening to the show.
Oh, okay, it's that easy. All right, well then, Gabriel Custodiet, thank you for joining me in the trenches.
Dun, 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 dun. My pleasure.
Thanks for watching to the end of the video. If you got value from it, consider joining as a channel member, which directly supports what we do here. The link is below, and if you're hungry for more, here are 2 more videos for you, and we'll see you in the next one.